Picture the moment when a sealed door, forgotten for over 3,000 years, finally cracks open. The stale air of an ancient past escapes into the present, carrying with it something far beyond just dust. Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon were on the verge of a discovery that would change history forever. But what they didn't realize is that they might also have awakened a mystery that still puzzles us today. When Tutankhamun's tomb was uncovered in 1922, the world was in awe. Yet, in the shadows of this monumental find, strange occurrences, sudden deaths, and whispers of an ancient curse began to spread. Could they have disturbed something they shouldn't have? Now, it might sound like a tall tale, thinking an ancient curse could reach through the centuries to claim lives in modern times. After all, we live in a world built on science and reason, right? But back then, Egypt was still cloaked in an air of mystery, and the bizarre events that followed the tomb's opening were hard to ignore, even for the skeptics. Were the ancient Egyptians' beliefs in protecting their dead with powerful curses more than just myths? Or could it all have been a tragic sequence of coincidences that no one could explain? The truth is, no one has a clear answer, even today. Scientists have put forth their theories, but the story of Tutankhamun, his rushed burial, the anomalies in his tomb, and the deaths linked to his discovery, continue to stir the imagination. And this is where our journey really begins. As you dive into this tale, you're not just uncovering an archaeological find. You're stepping into a world that blurs the line between history and the unknown. But before we unravel the curse itself, let's explore how it all started. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb was no ordinary find. Imagine standing in the Valley of the Kings, surrounded by the relentless desert, and beneath your feet lies the tomb of a pharaoh no one had heard of until that moment. In 1922, after years of searching, Howard Carter finally struck gold. Literally. The tomb, unlike many others, had remained mostly untouched for over 3,000 years, preserving treasures and mysteries alike. As the doorway was breached, Carter famously peeked inside, and, when asked what he saw, could only respond, "Wonderful things." But what those wonderful things revealed was only the beginning of the mystery. What set Tutankhamun's tomb apart was not just the sheer volume of treasures inside, but also the peculiarities that archaeologists couldn't ignore. Items appeared to be repurposed from other tombs, as though his burial had been rushed. Walls were hastily decorated, and some of the treasures showed signs they weren't originally intended for him. This wasn't the glorious resting place of a powerful ruler, but seemed almost like a patchwork grave for a boy king. It led many to wonder, what really happened during Tutankhamun's reign, and why was his burial handled with such haste? Of course, the opening of the tomb set off a chain reaction that went far beyond archaeology. Soon after the discovery, strange and tragic events began to unfold. Was it the excitement of the find or something more? Newspapers at the time began to speak of a curse, hinting that disturbing the tomb had unleashed something dark. But the story of the curse doesn't begin there. To understand what really happened, we have to look at who Tutankhamun was and the circumstances surrounding his death. Let's explore the theories about how this young pharaoh met his end. After the tomb of Tutankhamun was opened, rumors of a curse spread like wildfire. It wasn't long before people started linking the deaths of those involved in the discovery to an ancient supernatural force. Lord Carnarvon, the financial backer of the excavation, was the first to die just months after the tomb was opened, from a seemingly trivial mosquito bite that led to blood poisoning. His sudden death, followed by others connected to the tomb, fueled the idea that anyone who dared disturb the young pharaoh's final resting place was doomed. The media sensationalized the story, making it impossible to ignore the whispers of an ancient curse. As more deaths followed, archaeologists, museum workers, even family members, people started to truly believe in the curse of the pharaohs. Some claimed it was the revenge of the gods for trespassing on sacred ground, while others said it was the spirit of Tutankhamun himself, seeking justice for the disturbance of his eternal slumber. However, modern experts dismiss these claims as superstition. They point to scientific explanations, such as exposure to dangerous toxins or mold present in the sealed tomb, as possible causes for the unfortunate deaths. But even with logical reasoning, the fear of the curse continued to grow, leaving many wondering if there was more to the story than meets the eye. What makes the curse so captivating is not just the eerie coincidences, but the enduring mystery that surrounds it. Decades later, the legend of the curse still grips the imagination. Did ancient Egypt truly possess the power to reach beyond the grave and exact vengeance? Or was it all a media-fueled myth that got out of hand? Regardless of the answer, the so-called curse has become just as much a part of Tutankhamun's story as the treasures buried with him. But what does all this say about the boy king himself? Let's reflect on the fascinating figure behind the legend. Tutankhamun may have ruled for only a short time, but his story has lasted millennia. It's fascinating how this boy king, who came to power at just 9 years old, has captured the world's attention more than most other pharaohs. There's something almost magical about how his tomb, hidden for so long, managed to escape the looters and tomb raiders that pillaged other royal resting places. And yet, it's the mystery surrounding his life and death, and the legends that followed his discovery, that make him such a captivating figure. In many ways, he's become larger than life, an enigma wrapped in gold and curses. But when you really think about it, perhaps Tutankhamun was less a grand figure of history and more a tragic one. He inherited a kingdom recovering from turmoil, ruled for just a decade, and was likely in poor health due to the royal family's inbreeding. His tomb, hastily thrown together, speaks to a life cut short, with little time to prepare for the grandeur that befitted a pharaoh. Yet, despite this, his story is told with such reverence, almost as if fate wanted him to be remembered. Maybe that's why people are so drawn to his tale. It's not just the treasures or the supposed curse, but the fragile humanity behind it all. In the end, Tutankhamun's legacy is as mysterious as his life was brief. We might never know all the answers to the questions surrounding his death or the so-called curse, but that's part of what keeps us coming back to his story. There's an allure in the unknown, in the gaps that history leaves for us to fill with our imaginations. And when you think about it, isn't that what makes history so interesting? But before we close the book on Tutankhamun, let's not forget to look at the bigger picture. What does his story teach us about the delicate dance between history, myth, and mystery?